The Story of Skar. Skar is 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighs 285 pounds. His appearance is pale. He has tattoos, face paint, long greasy hair, and a huge scar from his left pectoral to his gut. He hails from, you guessed it, parts unknown. Skar's signature moves involve a running power slam, a big boot, and a move in which he calls the resurrection, a chokeslam into a powerbomb combination. Imagine, if you will, a dark and eerie demon who is fueled by punishing others for his own personal gain. The twisted and disturbed character of Skar is essentially the Cain of impetus. Every wrestling promotion needs a dark and demonic character, and Skar is the embodiment of hell on earth. Escaping from a broken home with his innocent sister, Susan, a young Skar would use his father's car to flee the scene. However, his desperation to escape would cause him to lose control of the vehicle, sending him and his sister into a nearby river. Although Skar escaped, his little sister was not so lucky. As a result, Skar would make it his life's mission to, somehow, someway, bring back his sister from the dead. Along his journey, Skar would take part in some death-defying, life-altering and chaotic battles, all in which are seen in the 2-year span of Impetus. As Impetus ascends over its opening weeks, the eerie and creepy vignettes for an arrival of Skar appears on our screens. The demonic, face-painted freak claims to be a tortured soul, vowing vengeance on the world and the devil himself, blaming us and Satan for everything he has lost. Refusing to accept the blame for his past, Skar seeks retribution in the world of professional wrestling. Reaching Impetus's first pay-per-view, Impulse, Skar makes his frightening debut. With Barry the Bogan and Greg Gordo fighting over, believe it or not, a thong, the comedic match is quickly flipped on its head. The chaotic creature appears after a blackout and delivers a thunderous chokeslam powerbomb combination to the victorious Barry. As Skar stares into the camera, hell has arrived in Impetus. The Story of Skar. We get to learn about Skar over the next few weeks, starting with his in-ring debut, 1 week removed from the pay-per-view. Slow and gloomy, Skar enters with red lighting as he crawls his way to the ring, menacingly. Finally countering Skar's attacks, his opponent gets cocky and slaps the face of the monster. However, Skar begins to shake, not from anger, but almost from fear. Skar almost seems possessed by his inner thoughts, rubbing his face with his trembling hands, almost touching it for comfort. Refusing to be in fear, Skar lashes out by hitting his opponent with that deadly chokeslam powerbomb combination for the win. As Skar exits, we wonder what the inner turmoil that the chaotic creature has vented. Our questions about the monster are answered on the following episode in the form of another vignette. Titled as The Story of Skar Chapter 1, a reenactment of Skar's childhood is shown, narrated by a deep, male voice. At the age of 10, Skar was insanely gifted. Although talented, Skar would have to burden the perils of a broken home. Poor, jobless and hateful, Skar's parents would lash out on each other, seemingly on a bi-daily basis. At the mere age of 13, Skar witnessed a verbal dispute spiral into a domestic attack, as his mother caused the physicality, all starting with a slap. In a heat of rage, the father responded terribly, leading to a beatdown of the underpowered wife. This attack would only worsen as Skar, hidden in the shadows, would then watch his father brutally kill his mother in a violent dispute, all starting with a slap. Uncovering the past of the monster, Skar heads into action on the next episode, with the commentators hoping not to see another slap to the face. As Skar's cowardly opponent constantly runs away from the challenge, he is eventually chased down by the monster. Delighted to counter the powerful offense, the opponent jumps up and down with glee, happy with his performance. However, he turns around to see an infuriated Skar, spitting with intensity. With no other choice left, the opponent decides to hug Skar in hopes to calm him down. However, this seems to trigger Skar's emotions. Just like his last match, Skar seems possessed, traumatized by the affection, and soon enters a fit of rage, ending in the chokeslam powerbomb combination. Another reenacted vignette explains Skar's tortured past on Impetus's next episode. After witnessing the murder of his mother, Skar also witnessed a burial to hide the evidence. Skar didn't bear this loss alone, as his younger sister, Susan, had to be told lies by her daddy as to why her mother was missing. Fearful of his father, Skar remained mute about his mother's death. As it seemed more and more obvious that Skar knew of the dark secret, the father tried so desperately to appear loving, masking his acts from his children with a hug. Each time he received love and affection, Skar grew more hatred for his murderous father. However, even though receiving affection from the old man, Skar and his sister would still receive beatings from their deranged father. For years, Skar and Susan would have to bear a bipolar parent. One moment throwing fists and the next living a fairy tale. All with the action of a hug. As Skar begins to be bothered by the more notable competitors of Impetus, the tragic story of his family is further revealed in another reenactment. Skar's father would continue his domestic ways on his offspring, venting his own guilt and turmoil out on his son and daughter. The siblings would withstand the punishment until one night a familiar slap caused Skar to snap. In a heat of rage, Skar would destroy his father, repaying the same gift he caused his mother. As a result, the children were parentless. Skar and Susan would escape the murderous scene by using their deceased father's car, getting as far away from their childhood as possible. Accompanied by his sister and his own insanity, Skar hoped to create a new life for himself. However, quick into his desperate journey, Skar lost everything. Travelling late at night, Skar's lack of sleep came into play as he fell asleep at the wheel, spinning the car out of control and sending himself and Susan into a nearby river. With Skar emerging from the car and the water, he was relieved to have survived, only to realize his sister hadn't risen to the surface. Skar searched deep within the waters for Susan, but he failed to locate his final family member. To this day, she and the car have yet to be seen. Skar has lost his parents, his sister, and his way of life, and would spend the rest of it searching for his sibling, wanting to raise her from the underground, to have her living yet again. With the chaotic creature continuing to vent his internal torture in the ring, the final chapter of Skar's story is revealed. Searching for his sister, with inconclusive results, Skar found himself lonelier and more desperate than ever before. Ever persistent, Skar still refused to believe his sister was truly gone, and attempted many ways to bring her back, dead or alive. Seeking and failing to get results from the local church, Skar decided to look for other, more optimistic ways of recovering his lost sibling. He began a ritual and decided to embark on a hellish path that he would continue for the rest of his days. Approached by a shady demon, Skar was told to awaken Susan's corpse with an act of punishment to the innocent. From this, the pain being delivered would lead to Susan's rebirth. With his only option heard loud and clear, Skar decided to embrace the demon and venture forth, smiting all he could with the chokeslam powerbomb combination, or, as Skar likes to poetically call it, the resurrection. Skar would continue this destructive behaviour for the rest of his life, in hopes to, one day, see his sister again. You want to know how I got these scars? Multiple months into Skar's impetus existence, the curious mind of Greg Gordo hopes to seek answers from the monster. Greg is baffled to realise that no one has bothered to ask Skar how he received the huge scar on his chest. After pestering the monster for weeks, Skar finally revealed his answer in another reenactment of his life. Placed in a boiler room backstage, Skar speaks to the nosy Greg Gordo. The monster starts by claiming that he misses his sister, his Susan. After searching high and low and everywhere in between, Skar lost hope. So, he did what every man does when he loses hope. He resorted to God. He asked the so-called Creator for answers, begging and pleading the man in the sky for his sister back. And what did he get from the almighty God himself? Nothing. Not even a subtle sign. Furious with his faith, he rebelled against his peaceful religion and converted to the devil. His faith of heaven ceased, and his following of hell began. As a result, the rituals commenced. The sacrifices had to be made, and soon enough, Satan answered his call. Unlike God, Satan was there for him, happy to listen and help him. Or so he thought. With Skar willing to do anything to find his sister, the devil offered her location in exchange for a soul. Skar's soul. Blinded by his desperation to find his one and only sister, Skar was about to accept, only for the devil to perform the act without consent. Ripping Skar's flesh wide open, the devil ripped away the spirit from Skar's body. Moments later, Skar awoke, next to the river in which he last saw Susan. With his sister nowhere to be seen, it soon became clear to our monster that he was screwed by the devil. Life took his sister away. God never answered him, and Satan lied to him. In Skar's mind, there is no one in this world by his side other than the spirit of his sister, and he will not stop until he finds her. The Condemning. After dealing with Greg Gordo, Skar proves to be dominant, destructive, feared and powerful. In fact, Skar has every attribute to become a champion. However, he cares not for the possession of gold, as he cares only for the possession of his sister. Entering a monster versus monster feud with the masked assassin known as Conrad Damnation, the masked opponent is revealed to be none other than the savage yet cowardly Dylan Dark. After being fooled and embarrassed, Skar fails to gain his redemption as the brutal attacks from Dylan lead to a violent ambush in the parking lot. Desperate to rid himself of the chaotic creature, Dylan places the monster in a body bag. He chucks him in the trunk of the car and drives out of the arena, dumping the unconscious body in, poetically, a nearby river. These actions not only led Dylan to the Coast to Coast Championship, but also a female companion known as Rochelle. Stealing the girlfriend of Charlie Finch, Dylan would lock lips with Rochelle and celebrate his 2 new trophies. However, the couple's fun would quickly end, as the return of Skar threatens the careers and lives of Dylan and Rochelle. Especially Rochelle. Dark Times with Dylan Dark. During his absence, Skar had learnt some very important information in order to regain his sibling. He explains that the only way for his sister to rise from her death is by a sacrifice, a ritual, by giving her a body, a vessel for her soul to return to. Seeking his sister's spirit as well as seeking revenge on Dylan Dark, Skar has chosen Rochelle to be that very vessel. He needs to be alongside his sister by any means necessary, and if he can't bring the vessel to Susan, then he'll need to bring Susan to the vessel. Due to Dylan's high pride and persistence to rid himself of the monster, he challenges Skar to a riverbank match. A match in which is located at Susan's death. A match where the winner throws their opponent into the river in which she drowned in. Skar accepts the challenge but quickly throws a curveball, accepting on one condition. He explains that he will not only get his sister back by sacrificing a female body, but by destroying a symbol of power. A symbol of strength and hierarchy, a symbol much like the Coast to Coast Championship. Skar tells Dylan that if he wants his revenge, then he must put everything on the line. His girlfriend, his livelihood, and the Coast to Coast title. Dylan accepts the challenge with Rochelle in fear, worried for what just may happen. Skar's victory in the riverbank match causes him to claim the Coast to Coast Championship from his rival. However, with Dylan being saved from his drowning death, the enemies must complete their rivalry in the second ever Dome match. Capturing his symbol of power at the riverbank, Skar exits the dome with the female vessel in his arms, ready to perform the much anticipated ritual. The ritual. With Dylan revealing his lack of care toward his female associate, Skar walks out, 1 week removed from the dome, holding the Coast to Coast title in one hand and pulling a scared Rochelle by the arm in the other. The ring is seen with orange and red lighting, torches burning on each turnbuckle, and a pentagram in the middle of the ring with a trash can placed to the side. Skar forces Rochelle in the ring as she whimpers with fear. The monster explains his 15-year story and how it has all led to this. He explains that in order to reawaken his sibling, he must perform a ritual by sacrificing an item of power and sacrificing a vessel for Susan's soul to return to. With the items ready to be sacrificed and the ritual ready to take place, all that needs to happen now is for him to destroy the item of power. Skar places the title in a trash can and recites foreign words, leading to the title being engulfed with flames. Next, the vessel. With Rochelle petrified, she attempts to break free from Skar's hand. Failing to outpower the monster, she is ordered to stay still but refuses. Sick of Rochelle's need to make things difficult, Skar scoops the woman up and hits a power slam in the middle of the ring. Standing over the vessel, Skar then steps back and recites more foreign text. He continues his scripture louder and louder. With lightning seen and thunder heard throughout the arena, the ritual is actually taking place. The arena rumbles loudly for a while until the lights blacken with silence. With the arena lit back up, things are just as they were before. Skar looks down at the body of Rochelle and lays his hand on it. The body then starts to move rapidly, almost looking like a seizure. This occurs until 2 doctors come out to check on the body, with Skar threatening them to stay away. As the doctors look on with caution, the body then stops moving, leaving the vessel flat on its stomach. The body then stands itself up, unbalanced, raising the head last, slowly. Rochelle's body and face looks the same. The body stands, motionless and emotionless. The eyes blink multiple times and then look around to discover its surroundings. Unbalanced, the eyes eventually lock on to Skar. The body then gains balance and moves towards the monster. She smiles, touching Skar's face, realizing that it's him. After staring at each other with disbelief, the two then hug in happiness. A doctor approaches Susan, believing it still to be Rochelle. Hissing with venom, Susan pushes the doctor away and blasts him in the face with a spinning heel kick. As the other doctor approaches, Susan hits her own resurrection on the other doctor. A siblinghood reunited, Skar and Susan pose together in the ring and are ready to take on the world with flames shooting out of each turnbuckle. The siblings have arrived. Twisted Sister. Destruction seems to run within the family DNA, as Susan shows her dominance, competing in singles action just 1 week after her rebirth. Susan enters with her brother, still in Rochelle's body, with her hair slightly greasy and untidy. The appearance of Rochelle gradually gets worse from here on out. Although Rochelle would have kept the body's appearance up to an attractive standard, Susan now owns the body and cares little for aesthetics, focusing more on brutality. Ready to face the rookie opponent of Jackie Sky, Susan stands in her corner, emotionless and motionless for her debut. Jackie paces, wondering how to approach her opponent until Susan charges and pounces on her. Ripping Jackie apart, Susan bites her forehead, tearing the skin right off. In huge pain, Jackie crawls quickly to the corner, trying to heal her wounds. As the mortal's blood drips down her undead mouth, Susan grabs Jackie and hits the spinning heel kick to end it all. Approaching her next act of violence on the following episode, Susan once again enters with her proud brother as she readies herself to bite the forehead of her opponent, Kelly Sales. After her flesh being ripped off, Kelly retreats in the corner in pain, much like the previous week with Jackie Sky. Licking her lips with delight and impatience, Susan charges for Kelly in the corner, only for the victim to trip the zombie into the turnbuckle, cranking her neck right to the side. What should be a broken neck doesn't faze Susan at all as she stands and turns slowly. Approaching the retreating Kelly, a smile appears on the twisted head of Susan as she cracks it back in place. With Kelly shocked, Susan hits her spinning heel kick, now named the Revival, for the win. Tree Man. As the weeks progress, so too does the siblinghood between Skar and Susan, as the dominant brother-sister duo not only succeed in separate matches, but find their momentum increasing in tag team action. Meanwhile, sprinkled throughout the Impetus episodes, vignettes for a new and mysterious competitor called Tree Man is shown. An eerie, pale, long-haired loner is seen in multiple angles and situations as he walks, runs and jumps in a dark forest, searching for something. Without seeing the man's face, his patience has worn out and believes that it is time to get what he has always wanted. Additional vignettes continue to explain the Tree Man's intentions. He claims that the most natural thing in his life was actually forbidden from him. As a result, now, nature takes over him. We then see the Tree Man sitting, leaning against a tree, all with a body bag seen in the background lying next to some leaves. A third vignette is seen of the mysterious man as he asks the audience how long they would wait to get what they wanted. In the distance, blurred by the rain and the focus of the camera, the Tree Man's location is seemingly at a riverbank. The fourth vignette witnesses the Tree Man talk about it. He claims that despite not owning it, he lost it. It seemed to be lost forever until he found love with nature. Once again, it has been taken away from him, and he refuses to be denied a second time. With many trees in the background, a crowbar hangs from one of the branches. Family feud. After reuniting with her brother, Susan establishes herself to be just as deadly as Skar, as she creates many victories for the family in tag team action. The siblings stand as dominating victors, only for Dylan Dark to appear on stage. Speaking to the confused siblings, Dylan reminds Skar of his vow of revenge after their war inside the dome. Threatening the monster, Dylan reintroduces Skar to a man called Dominic Silver. With Dylan exiting with a snigger, the lights go out and come back on to see the Tree Man standing in the ring and behind the siblings, staring Skar down. Rather than attacking, the Tree Man glares at Skar, who turns around slowly, looking at him with confusion. Before physicality arises, Susan gets in the middle of both of them, halting their battle. After calming her brother down, she then looks into the eyes of the intruder, focusing hard. Understanding who stands before her, Susan looks on with disbelief as the Tree Man nods slowly, affirming his existence. Shocked and almost happy to see the intruder, Susan is about to react with glee, only for Skar to notice. Attempting to protect his little sister, Skar tries to strike, only for the intruder to counter and take Skar down with a package piledriver. After dropping the chaotic creature, the Tree Man stares at Susan and leaves after stroking her hair. Trying to come to terms with her seemingly new reality, Susan is shocked as she cares for her brother while Tree Man leaves the scene. Lord of the Woods. Demanding answers the following week, Skar enters with quickness, ignoring his classic entrance and heading straight for the ring. Susan follows as she tries to keep up with her brother, clearly bothered by the issue. Skar explains that he could be out here wanting vengeance on Dylan Dark yet again. After all, he introduced the world to a man called Dominic Silver. However, Dylan referred to this man's arrival last week as a reintroduction, meaning that Skar has already met this man before. Unaware of a lot of the details, Skar knows that Tree Man's existence somehow involves Susan and, as a result, he is deemed an instant threat. Skar wants an answer from the so-called Dominic Silver and dares him to confront him again right now. The music of Tree Man is heard for the first time throughout the arena. As the siblings wait for his appearance, they are disappointed to only see text on the screen. This text reads, Dominus Silverum. The Tree Man is seen on the screen, sitting against a tree in the forest. He glares, asking Skar why he doesn't remember him. He claims that Skar acts like a hero, like some sort of savior, but affirms that he really is not. He asks if Skar has ever wondered why his upbringing was so terrible, why it was so horrifying. It wasn't because of an abusive father. It wasn't because of an absent mother. It was because of him and his selfish, manipulative, and psychotic ways. With Skar disagreeing, the Tree Man says that he knows this for a fact, because he was there. He explains that he tried to be a part of the family, but Skar would never let him. As Skar vents confusion, the Tree Man reveals himself to be the boy next door, the forbidden crush. The boy you tell your daughter to stay away from, or, in this case, your sister. That's right, it's me, Tyler Rose. Skar is shocked with Susan closing her eyes, hoping it wouldn't be true. The apparent Tyler Rose continues, explaining himself to be the boy who was never good enough for Skar's little sister. With Skar in disbelief, Tyler says that Skar wanted to protect her from boys, protect her from abusive men just like his father apparently was. Tyler screams at the brother, asking how well he protected his sister. After all, Skar drowned her in a damn river. And then what did he do? He fled from the scene, running away from his responsibilities. Skar hates hearing Tyler's words with Susan trying to comfort him. Tyler continues, telling Skar that when he found out about Susan's death, he stayed. He claims that after Skar kicked him out of their lives, he heard the news that Susan had gone missing and went searching. He searched high and low until he came across this very forest. In fact, a couple of meters down is a river. The river. The river in which he last saw Susan's face. Tyler claims that he investigated the scene and found the car and her body inside. But he didn't run like Skar did. No. He stayed. He knew that although he'd lost his one true love, he was better. She was better. They were better, having their souls remain in the same location. Tyler stands up, showing his trench coat that connects itself with a tree. He claims to have remained in the woods, where he and Susan could continue their love. Skar may remember him as Tyler Rose, but the forest now knows him as Dominic Silver, or Dominus Silverum, Lord of the Forest. Happy to be with Susan, the body of Tyler Rose became one with nature. Now demanding to be called Dominic Silver, Tyler states that his soul has remained with Susan in the forest. Dominic believes that they were happy to be in their home of the forest, happy without Skar's blessing. Then, Skar's acts of selfishness played out once more as, after a damn decade, he took her from Dominic yet again. He took her soul and prostituted it into the body of another woman. Asking how Skar could dare to perform such a selfish act, Dominic claims that this is why he's come to Impetus, to rid Skar from the love equation. Dominic needs to eliminate Skar from his world, their world, so that he and Susan can finally be happy again. As Susan looks on with care, Skar is furious in the ring with Dominic's words. Unaware and unbothered about what name to call him, Skar tells the tree man that he's going to have to do a lot more than what he did last week in order to get between him and his sister. Proposed a fight, Dominic denies the challenge and hopes to battle his nemesis where more eyes can see his love and desire for Susan. He has heard about the pay-per-view Insurgency, in which takes place in 2 weeks, claiming it to be an event where problems will be solved and where an uprising will occur. He demands Skar to face him there, to determine Susan's happiness. After debating with Susan in the ring, Skar says that he'll be damned to see her taken away so quickly. With a creep like Dominic clearly deranged, vowing love for his sister, Skar accepts the challenge, claiming that he will send Dominic back to the forest and set the damn thing on fire. Dominic sits back slowly into his tree and smirks, claiming that he cares not if Skar burns his forest down, as he will have Susan by his side. Finally, they can die side by side, finally, together. Skar is furious as the tree man disappears off screen. The siblings exit the ring with Skar in irritation and Susan worried. Susan's side. As the monstrous match is made for Insurgency, the siblings enter 1 week before the pay-per-view for tag team combat. As Susan shows her anxiety for the tree man's resurgence, Skar is ready to vent his anger. After their victory, Skar and Susan barely get a chance to breathe as Dominic Silver appears on the screen, located on top of his tree. He is impressed with Skar's dominance, as he is far more threatening today than he was 15 years ago. After last week's little chat, he is excited to be facing Skar next week at Insurgency. However, 15 years later, and Skar still ignores the main problem, as he has ignored his sister, ridding her of the chance to vent her thoughts and opinions. Dominic wants to know what she thinks of all of this, how she feels being separated by her one true love. He asks for her opinion on how her own flesh and blood is, once again, attempting to eliminate her soulmate from the equation. Susan speaks, saying that she feels that Skar is overprotective, but overprotective for a good reason. She tells Dominic that she doesn't even know him and is insulted to know that he just expects to pick things up after 15 years. She explains to him that 2 weeks ago, when he returned into her life, she looked into his eyes and saw the silver-tongued Tyler Rose that she had a crush on over a decade ago. Now all she sees is a creepy twig man who calls himself Dominic Silver. Skar was never the problem all those years ago. Tyler was. Tyler was the manipulator. He was the boy with the problems, and at the time, she didn't know any better. At the time, she hated Skar for forbidding her of the crush, but loves him more today because of it. She also feels that 15 years is a long time. 15 years ago, Tyler wasn't sprouting branches out of his ass. Back then, Susan was in her own skin and not absorbed into somebody else's. 15 years ago, Skar hadn't gone through hell and back, faced the devil himself for his and her freedom. Skar has gone above and beyond for her, making sure that she can breathe air once again. If Dominic's story is to be believed, she is happy that Skar didn't waste away in the woods somewhere, happy to be close to her dead and rotting body. He actually did something. Skar is her brother, and she will always be by his side. However, there is one thing she disagrees with him on. After Insurgency, Skar will not be sending him back to the forest and setting the damn thing on fire. Because she will! With Dominic seemingly upset, he convinces himself that Skar has actually manipulated her once again. No bother, as if Susan won't willingly continue her love for him, then he'll just have to force it out of her. He promises to take Skar out next week, allowing him and Susan to feel each other's embrace once and for all. The three stare each other down, ready for the pay-per-view. Insurgency. Skar would go on to the pay-per-view in an attempt to rid himself and his sister of the stalker. After Dominic Silver makes his creepy entrance, the two rivals stare at one another in the ring. Beating each other down in a hard-fought battle, the siblings put an end to Dominic's spooky and obsessive mission. Or so they thought. The following episode showcases another vignette of Dominic, walking in his grassy terrain. Although losing at Insurgency, he believes to have gained something he'd like to share with Skar tonight. With Dominic attempting to continue his hunt for love, the siblings approach the ring quickly with frustration. Skar grabs the microphone with anger and claims that despite hearing Dominic's little poem earlier tonight, he and Susan are not out here to listen to what he has to say. In fact, they're here to do the opposite. Susan refuses to have her stalker continue his obsession. However, in mid-speech, the sister is interrupted by Dominic as he appears on the screen once again, located in his forest. As Dominic begins yet another speech, he walks through the environment and approaches a beaten-down shack. He starts by reminding the siblings that they are both inhuman. Despite their cold blood, he is surprised that his long-term rival and long-lost lover have both shown the human reaction of naivety. Naivety in which caused them to believe that last week was the end to their story. Dominic tells the siblings that he will not stop fighting for his one true love and claims that, although Skar may have beaten him in the ring, he refuses to stop until he is defeated on his own turf, his own home, his neck of the woods. It's going to take more than a simple loss at Insurgency to keep his heart away from Susan. Dominic approaches the aforementioned shack and opens the door. He reminds Skar and Susan that he, too, is in fact inhuman, supernatural. As a result, he can do some supernatural things. Dominic walks into the building and closes the creaky door. As the door slams shut, the arena lights go out. After a moment of darkness, the arena brightens yet again, only to see Skar stand alone, without his sister in the ring. As Skar searches for Susan, he looks back at the screen to see Dominic inside his shack. He reminds Skar of his promise. If Susan won't willingly continue her love for him, then he'll just have to force it out of her. The camera turns to see Susan wrapped in tree branches, trapped against the wall. With the wood covering her mouth, her panicked screams are barely audible. Unbothered by his true love's fury, Dominic approaches Susan with care, telling her that, for the first time in so long, they can live here, together, alone at last. Witnessing his sister kicking and screaming out of fear and anger, Skar demands his rival to leave her alone, ordering Dominic not to lay a single finger on her. As Susan squirms with discomfort, Dominic sniggers, claiming that Skar's words are very fitting. For the next 7 days, Dominic will keep Susan here in the shack, provide for her, feed her, love her. Next week, Dominic wants Skar to come to his woods in a race to the finish. Located 1 mile away from the shack, they will fight throughout his forest until one of them reaches the building, where the only way to be victorious is to land a single finger on their loved one. Dominic claims that if he is defeated on his own soil, then Skar may leave with his sister. However, if Dominic first lays hands on his princess, she will remain in his home forever. Skar refuses to play any more of Dominic's games, only for the stalker to slowly leave the building with a smirk, telling Skar that there is only one way to get his sister back. Skar yells with fury as Dominic closes the door behind him, leaving Susan trapped and alone inside the shack. Skar hates to realize that he must go to the forest in order to save his sister. Capture the Hag. The Race to the Finish match is competed in a cinematic experience on the next episode of Impetus. Skar arrives in the cold, dark and eerie woods. He looks around and demands Dominic to reveal himself. With Dominic refusing to grace us with his presence, Skar continues to walk with caution, noting his surroundings. Upon his cautious journey, he finds an arrow engraved on a tree, clearly directing him toward Dominic and the shack. Following multiple of these arrows, Skar is confused to see text on a tree which reads, "Almost there, XD." Skar hates to be made a fool of and continues to see another engravement on a tree reading, "Your sister is mine," leading to yet another one that reads, "S and D equals love heart." Skar gets angrier and angrier throughout the engravements, running through the woods with desperation, only to come across a final tree that says, "X marks the spot." Eventually, in the distance, Skar sees a big X on the ground, created by sticks. Assuming to have arrived at his destination, Skar calls for his rival once again. Standing in the middle of this X, Skar witnesses Dominic drop from the trees behind him. With Skar noticing, he refuses to turn around and acknowledge his enemy, and instead, he listens. Dominic walks slowly around Skar with confidence, circling him, asking how much he truly loves his sister. Believing Skar's love to never be enough, Dominic believes that his own heart, passion, and care for Susan is stronger than her brother's. Skar disagrees, believing every word to have come out of Dominic's mouth to be a lie. However, one truth that Dominic spoke was labeling Skar as naive. Skar admits that he was naive to believe that he would be rid of Dominic after Insurgency. Angry with his human emotions, Skar claims that he should have burnt Dominic and his whole damn forest to the ground. Although he has yet to engulf the forest in flames, he has no problem in doing it right now. Dominic laughs and takes the threat lightly. He knows Skar won't do anything to his forest as long as his sister remains locked inside of it. Speaking of which, Dominic points to the shack which is seen in the distance. With Susan inside, begging to be saved, the question is, who will save her? Ready to begin, Skar says that he saved his sister before and will do it again. Dominic laughs once more, upping Skar in the game of banter. He claims that he may have called Skar naive, but he also said the same thing for Susan. Getting personal, Dominic explains that he has always taken advantage of the naive, younger and weaker member of the family, and claims that after years of being submissive to the overprotective brother, it feels great to finally dominate the underprotected sister. Skar screams with rage and attacks Dominic, starting the fight. The two brawl in the woods, using their surroundings to beat each other down as they approach the shack. Halfway there, Skar gains control and causes his enemy to suffer. Leaving Dominic in a bloody mess against a tree, Skar begins his walk toward the shack, only to stop. Realizing he is dealing with an abnormal being, Skar attempts to walk back and apply more punishment, only for Dominic to be gone. Irritated, Skar searches for a while, only to look at the shack. Although Dominic may be playing games, Skar realizes his opportunity to now save his sister. Cautious of Dominic's location, Skar gets closer to the shack, only to stop before he gets to the door, wondering where his enemy is once again. Refusing to be hesitant, Skar decides to act quickly and bursts his way through the door to retrieve his sister. Relieved to save Susan, Skar rips the branches off of her. The two embrace with a hug and quickly escape the building in desperation. The question is, where has Dominic gone? Strife is like a river. Happy to be back together, Skar and Susan return to their tag-teaming ways on the next episode of Impetus, hoping to forget about their experience in the forest. After laying waste to yet another competitive team, their interactions with Dominic Silva continue as the Tree Man appears on the screen yet again. Located in his lonely shack, Dominic slowly paces in his empty building, lightly touching the wall in which Susan was trapped, caressing the outline of her previously placed body. He applauds Skar for the loyalty that he showed his sister last week. However, after their intense battle in their race to the finish, he asks if Skar had ever wondered why it was that easy. If he ever stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, Dominic allowed them to escape. Why though? After all of this time in wanting his true love back, after all these years of wanting her to himself, why would he decide to simply just give Susan over? After all, Dominic had a whole week with Susan, excited to start the rest of their lives together. Having Susan exactly where he wanted her, he attempted to lock lips with his long-lost lover, only to realize that after all of this pain, after all of this effort to bring her back, he has yet to gain what he truly wants. When staring into his girlfriend's eyes, he realized that it wasn't the woman that he loves, because it wasn't Susan. The undead woman he sees in that ring right now may have the soul of his one true love, but it is trapped inside of somebody else's body. Now, Skar may be happy with that small piece of her, but Dominic wants all of Susan back and demands that Skar make it happen. With the siblings confused, Dominic reminds Skar that he has lived here in his forest for a long time and, as a result, he has seen everything. He mentions the previous brawl Skar had at the riverbank, facing that man who holds the crowbar. Not only did Skar beat that man down, but he chucked him in the river as a sign of revenge. Now, it's Dominic's turn. At episode 100, Dominic demands that they return to his riverbank once again and finally capture the body of Susan. Either Skar will go in there willingly, or Dominic will force him in there. Furious with the idea, Skar yells at his rival, insisting that it's impossible to retrieve the body from where it remains. Even if it could be saved, he asks why Dominic Silver, the oh-so-lord of the forest, hasn't done it himself. Dominic yells back instantly, claiming that he has tried time and time again, but he just can't do it. He refuses to be questioned by a man like Skar, who, after all his years and attempts to save his sister, has never, ever even dipped a toe in that river. As Susan looks at her brother, insulted with his seemingly lack of effort, Dominic tells her that for 15 years, her loyal and oh-so-loving brother has never even tried to regain her body. Why? Because it is Skar's only fear. He doesn't want to relive the memory of that fateful day. He doesn't want to return to the deep waters of 15 years ago because he's scared. Refusing to listen, Skar disputes, claiming that even if Susan's body can be retrieved, it would never function. For Susan to come back in any way, her soul needed to return to a living, breathing body. That's why he never dived back into the river, because there was no reason to. Dominic disputes the ignorance. He believes that his beloved Susan can and will return, as no one has ever tried to actually do it. He tells Skar that he put Susan in the river, and whether he likes it or not, he will go back in there and retrieve her. From this, Dominic challenges Skar to a second riverbank match on the 100th edition of Impetus, where he will either retrieve Susan's body or die trying. Damsel in this rest. With the return of the riverbank match being questioned, our commentator, Aaron Cutler, decides to get answers. After eliminating yet another tag team on the following episodes, the siblings get approached by Aaron with caution in the ring. The commentator hopes to get a word from the monster concerning his match with Dominic at episode 100. However, Susan grabs the microphone instead, with anger. She vents her irritation with being seen as the damsel in distress, seen as the princess that is defenseless. She appreciates Skar's 15 years of efforts to bring her back to life, but after spending a damn week locked in a damp, broken and beaten down shack with Dominic, she has realized that the guy is sicker and crazier than they could have ever imagined. Understanding Skar's fears of the riverbank, she begins to tell him what he needs to do in order to end the war, only for Skar to snatch the microphone. Skar now speaks, and claims that he has gone through the fires of hell, stood face to face with the devil himself to get Susan's life back. As a result, he's not afraid of anything. He does not fear Dominic, and he does not fear death. Having a family fallout, Susan demands Skar to throw Dominic in the damn river, for if he fails, his 15 years of torture would be for nothing. Corrected and convinced, Skar nods his head slowly, understanding his sister's words. He then sends a message to his rival, telling Dominic that he's going to get what he wants. Everything he's hoped for over the last 15 years. He will be able to die alongside Susan, as he will send him to the bottom of the river, lifeless. Skar drops the microphone and exits alongside his now supportive sister. Toilet humor. 7 days before the fateful return of the riverbank match, Dominic makes his second appearance in the ring, primed for combat. Defeating his worthy opponent with the package piledriver, Dominic stares at the camera and decides to send a message to his rival by choking out his opponent. As the opponent struggles for air, the commentators ask if Skar will suffer the same fate at episode 100. With the message being heard loud and clear, out comes Skar instantly, glaring at his rival on stage. The chaotic creature storms to the ring and brawls with his enemy, leading out of the ring, through the crowd, and into a backstage area. The camera follows the fight throughout the hallways, leading to a public bathroom. As the two battle on the urine-stained floor, Dominic takes over offense and throws Skar into one of the cubicles. Now in control, Dominic shoves Skar's head in and out of the toilet, making him gasp for air. Skar is told to get used to this suffering, as the riverbank will bring one of two scenarios. Option 1, Skar retrieves Susan's beautiful body from the river. Before continuing with option 2, Dominic shoves Skar's head into the toilet bowl for multiple seconds. Finally pulling Skar's head to safety, he explains the second option. Option 2 sees Skar drowning, running out of breath until he dies, just like his sister. Either way, one life ends and another begins. Shoving the gasping body to the floor, Dominic leaves with Skar struggling to breathe. Episode 100. Similar to the first riverbank match, the two start off in the dark woods, awaiting each other. With both men promising to make their loved one proud, the two brawl, using the environment to their advantage. The two make their way on top of the familiar pier seen in the first riverbank match, threatening to throw each other off of it. With Dominic beating Skar to his knees, the chaotic creature teeters near the edge, unable to fight due to his fatigue. Moments away from victory, Dominic takes his time with a monologue, pleasured by Skar's pain. Poetically, Dominic grabs a huge tree trunk and raises it high above him. Asking Skar to say hi to Susan, Dominic smacks his rival with the tree, seemingly whacking him off the pier. Satisfied with his victory, Dominic begins to exit the pier with cockiness, only to realise that he has yet to hear a splash of water. Dropping his grin, he is now curious to see the contents of the river and decides to take a gander. Dominic's victory is halted, as he is confused to see a body floating in the water. Puzzled and tense, Dominic decides to make his way into the water and approach it. Not knowing who or what is floating in the water, Dominic gets closer and closer, only for the body to rise, gasp with air, and instantly attack him. It's Susan! Susan attacks Dominic back onto the land and hits the revival kick, turning Dominic around into a power slam from the reappearing Skar. Fish-hooking her ex-boyfriend, Susan grabs him to the pier with Skar following, talking trash to his rival. Placed near the edge of the pier, Skar picks the tree man up and hits the resurrection on Dominic, sending him into the river and ending the match. The siblings have, once again, perished the nightmares of their past. With Skar still undefeated and Susan rid of her stalker, the siblings are ready to continue their lives together without Dominic's interference.